This is 9.2, Part 1. We are going to be talking about the length of line segments. Now, if you had a problem that told you to find the length of the line segment AB, you could look on your coordinate plane and you could just count. Well, here's 1 unit, 4 to 3 is 1. 3 to 2 is 1. There's one more. Oh, that is 6 in all. It is 6 units. We don't know what kind of units they are, so we can just write units. So that's one way to do it. We can just count. The second way we can do it is we can look at parts of the line and add them together. So if our line crosses the other axis, we're going to add those up. So A has the coordinates of -4, 0, and B has the coordinates of 2, 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to add up the two parts of the line. We're going to add up the part of the line that is to the origin, A to the origin. Well, A to the origin is 4. And what we can think of here is we can think that's that. That's the absolute value of that -4 because A is on the -4. You can see that. So we just take that X coordinate. And then we can think, the origin to B is 2 because the X coordinate is 2. So then we can just add those two pieces of the line together. So we have the absolute value of 4 plus the absolute value of 2. The reason we think about it that way is because we're adding two pieces. And it doesn't matter if they're on the negative part of the number line or the positive part of the number line. They're just two lengths. So the absolute value of 4 plus the absolute value of 2 is equal to 6 because the absolute value of -4 is just 4, and the absolute value of 2 is just 2, and that equals 6. And so we got that same answer. Now, if you look at EF, you're going to do the same thing, but it happens to be on the y-axis. So we're going to think about that. Well, E is at 0, -6. And F is at 0, 1. Well, because they're in different sides of the x-axis, we're going to have two pieces of the line. Now we could just count up here. Oops. I just undid that. Let's try getting that back. Here we go. So we could just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it equals 7. But I can hear some of you saying to me, Mrs. Orr, do we have to cut out the graph and make the coordinate plane? Do we have to plot the points? And you are going to want an easier way. So guess what? Here is the easier way. So you think about E. Well, the X coordinates are the same. So it's going to be a line on that y-axis. So you can take the absolute value of -6, which is the length of the E to the origin, and you can add it to the absolute value of 1, which is F to the origin. And the absolute value of -6 is 6. The absolute value of 1 is 1. So together they equal 7. So let's see that again. The absolute value of -6 is 6, plus the absolute value of 1 is 7. And so that line segment is 7 units in length. Now, when you write this out, you don't have to write both of those. You could just write this part right here. but with the units on it. And that's enough. Let's look at a couple more. We have the line CD over here. This one is a little different because you have D all the way at 6 and C back at 3. So you can't just add 3 and 6 together. That would be 9. So that is not going to work. So let's get the coordinates there again. So the coordinate of D is 6, 0. And the coordinate of C is 3, 0. Okay, now that we know that, we can see that our y coordinates are equivalent. They're the same. So we know this makes a straight line on one of the lines on our graph. So we can also see, because they're both positive, that they're both in one domain here. Because of that, we need to subtract. As I said before, we cannot do this. Let's put it in red. We cannot say 6 plus 3. That is not going to work. Don't do that, because that would give you 9. And that line is not 9 units long. You can just see that. So because they're on the same part of the x-axis, we actually have to subtract. So D is 6 from the origin. And now we're going to subtract the C distance. C is 3 from the origin. And so that will equal 3 units in all. Let's do another one that's a little bit tricky. We're going to look at GH. And let's write down those points. G is going to be 0, 2, and H is going to be 0, 6. Now, what we have to do here is just kind of think about it and use a little bit of common sense. That's really what's going to help us out here. So, I know that those are both on one side of the axis, one side of the y, or of the x-axis. It's 6 and 2, because the x-axis points are the same. They're at the origin. They're 0. So we have 2 and 6. Well, we're not going to add 2 and 6 together because they're not on opposite sides of the x-axis. They're only on one side. So because of that, we have to subtract to get the right amount. So we can take the absolute value of 6 and subtract the absolute value of 2. So the absolute value of 6 is 6. Absolute value of 2 is 2. So that equals 4. Now, if you're unsure at all about this, or if you're still getting the hang of it, I would suggest that you go ahead and plot the points. Or in your book, they have many, many grids, and you could take your finger and put it down on one spot, put your other finger on the other spot, and kind of eyeball it and say, oh, about how long is that going to be? Oh, okay. Yeah, 13 is not an answer that is going to be the same. Or in this case, we're not going to say 6 plus 2, which would be 8, because that would be way too long. That line segment is much shorter than that. So you can think through that. Let's look at a couple more. Let's go ahead and look at MN. First thing we're going to do is look at the coordinates. And in some problems, they'll actually give you the coordinates, and then they'll say, how long is that line segment? And in that case, you'll go ahead and plot them if you need to, or just look at the graph and then add them up. So for M, we have -5, 5. For N, we have -5, 1. So when I look at those, I see that the x coordinate is the same on each one, so that I know this is a straight line on that -5 line. So I have the 5 and the 1. Now because they are the same sign, I know that they are both in one quadrant. They're just a little bit apart from each other, and so I can think, oh, I know what to do there. I just take the absolute value of one and subtract it from the other. So absolute value of 5 minus the absolute value of 1 is 4 units. And I can check that over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I'm right. Okay, let's see what happens if they just give you a couple of coordinates. Let's say they're going to give you the coordinates T, U. So those coordinates are going to be, let's say T is 1, negative 2, and let's say U is 4, negative 2. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to notice that those negative 2's are the same. And so you'll know, oh, that is going to be a straight line just on one of the lines of the grid. No problem at all. And then you're going to say, oh, well, the first two numbers are both positive. That means they're on one side of the axis. So I'm going to have to subtract to find out the answer. I'm going to have to take the larger number, absolute value of the larger number, and then subtract the smaller value from that. So absolute value of 4 minus the absolute value of 1 is 3 units. Now I can check that on my graph. So T was 1, negative 2, that's right here, and U is 4, negative 2, which is right here. And so here's my line. And if I add that up, 1, 2, 3 units. And so I know I'm right. You could practice with these other two lines right here, R to S and P to Q, if you want a little more practice.